This week on the show, we have NetBSD 8.0 being released, FreeBSD on Scaleway's ARM64 VPS, an encrypted backup tutorial with OpenBSD, DragonFly server storage upgrade, a Zpool checkpoints blog post, as well as G2K18 hackathon reports and more in this week's episode of BSD Now. BSD Now, episode 257, Great NetBSD 8, recorded on the 1st of August 2018. Hi, I'm your host, Benedikt Reuschling.
And I'm Alan Jude.
It is hot where we are, but nothing is hotter than this week's episode, of course, of BSD Now. And the headlines start off great with NetBSD version 8.0 being released. So that is nice. That's from July 17, 2018. And of course, NetBSD project is pleased to announce NetBSD 8.0, the 16th major release of the NetBSD operating system. This release brings stability improvements, hundreds of bug fixes, and many new features. Some highlights of NetBSD 8 release are the USB stack has been reworked apparently. So this is USB 3 support has been added. Oh, great. More speed for USB, among other things. There's an in-kernel audio mixer, audio_system, reproducible builds. That's also good. Full userland debug information with make debug is available. And while most install media do not come with them, the debug and xdebug sets can be downloaded and extracted as needed later. Yeah, for the people who are developing and want to do crash analysis and things like that.
Well, specifically, if you're not a developer, you normally don't have it installed. But if you start having a problem, you can go get the debug symbols that match the release binaries and add them so that suddenly you can debug those crashes or give more meaningful crashes to a developer to fix.
Okay, then there's the PAX mprotect or write XOR execute. The memory protection enforced by default on some architectures with fine-grained memory protection and suitable ELF formats, i386, AMD 64, EVB ARM, and LAN disk. Okay, plus there's PAX ASLR, which is address space layout randomization, enabled by default for i386, AMD 64, EVB ARM, LAN disk, and SPARC 64. There's also position-independent executables, or PI, by default on userland for i386, AMD 64, ARM, M68K, MIPS, SH3, and SPARC 64 architectures. Oh, wow. And new socket layer CAN has been added to communications, or for communications of devices on a CAN bus.
Which is used a lot in cars and other things like that.
Yeah, industry networking. A special pseudo-device interface has been added, IPsec-IF for route-based VPNs as well. And parts of the network stack have been made MP-safe, and the kernel option net_MP-safe is required to enable this. Hardening of the network stack has also been done in general, and various WAPBL, NetBSD's file system lock option, stability and performance improvements. Hey, wow, that looks like a bunch of new stuff in there, especially for security. Oh, and yes, of course, specific to i386 and AMD 64, CPUs, meltdown mitigations, SVS, separate virtual space enabled by default, Spectre version 2 mitigations, the Redpoline support in GCC used by default for kernels, as well as other hardware mitigations are also available, Spectre version 4 mitigations available for Intel and AMD, and PopSS workaround, user access to debug registers is turned off by default. Lazy FPU saving is disabled on vulnerable Intel CPUs, or the eager FPU, and the SMAP support is there. Oh wow, that's really a security bump in here in NetBSD.
Yeah, a lot of these fixes went into all the operating systems recently.
Oh yeah, there's the improvement and hardening of the memory layout, write XOR execute, fewer writable pages, better consistency and better performance, as well as UEFI bootloader. Hey, that's really nice. So now the many EVB ARM kernels now use the FDT, the flattened device tree information, which are loadable at boot time from an external file. And the number of kernels has decreased, but a number of boards have vastly increased. And there's, of course...
So you don't need kernels specifically compiled for the hardware you're going to run. It can know which devices are there from the flattened device tree file. And, if you go back all the way into history of Unix, you used to have to build your kernel specifically for your hardware and enable the drivers you wanted. We're kind of lucky in modern AMD 64 hardware that the PCI and PCI Express buses are enumerable. You can ask the bus, hey, what cards are plugged into you? Well, on ARM, that's not really a thing. And so you need to know what devices are there and also what addresses they're at so you can talk to them. And that's what the flattened device tree does in this case.
Yep, that helps. And there are, of course, lots of updates to third-party software like GCC 5.5 with the support that, as we mentioned, is address sanitizer and undefined behavior sanitizers, GDB 7.12, GNU Binutils 2.27, Clang LVM versions 3.81, OpenSSH 7.6, OpenSSL 1.02K, MDocML, ACPI-CA, NTP, Redis versions, DHCPD, and Lua 5.34. Of course, there's a bunch more in this release that is covered in the major release notes that are linked in our show notes. So yeah, definitely check it out. And congratulations, NetBSD, for another major release.
Yep. Looks like other interesting things. They have the RTWN driver support for the Realtek 8188 and 8192. So that's more AVG and wireless devices that are supported. Support for VirtIO SCSI for virtualization, and NVMe device drivers.
So that also works on devices that are becoming more and more general.
Especially in laptops and servers. So next up, we have a tutorial on running FreeBSD on ARM64 over at Scaleway. So you can actually rent ARM64 machines and run FreeBSD on them now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So they say, I've been thinking about doing this for about the 6 months that they've been offering this. But yesterday, I don't see the date when they actually wrote this, they actually signed up for the ARM64 offering. And turns out it's pretty great. It boots UEFI, and then you have a VirtIO disk, and it will run on FreeBSD. So this tutorial actually helps you depenguinate the default Linux install that they come with and put FreeBSD in its place. So it's pretty straightforward. For some reason, unlike the x86 machines, mounting additional volumes is not allowed on the ARM instances. So we'll have to move the running Linux to a RAM disk using pivot root, and then we can go about erasing the disk. So they spun up an instance with Ubuntu Zesty on it, SSHDN, installed gdisk, which is kind of like the gpart command on FreeBSD. It's a GPT disk utility. It's like fdisk, but for GPT. They created a tempfs, copied over enough of the operating system to be able to run on it, and then used pivot root to basically have the system running out of the temp directory instead of the root directory. And then once that's ready, and you've reconnected to SSH, now you can start up the services and get your system running out of this new file system root. I show you. And then what we'll do is we'll download the FreeBSD ARM64 image. In the tutorial, they have the link to a specific image. This is from July 19th. Obviously, if you're following this, you probably want to just grab the newest one, or 12.0 release once that comes out in a couple of months. But they grab that and then they DD it into that onto the disk, so that now the disk will be running or will contain the FreeBSD installer image.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to say in the notes here, look for the newest snapshot, not just follow the link that they have in the notes here, because that will not work after a couple of months when we delete the old snapshots.
Yeah, get the fresh one from the website.
Yeah. Now, because the memstick image you just wrote to the disk was for a 1 gig memstick, the partition table will be in the wrong spot. So they use the gdisk command to expand the partition table and rewrite it to be for the whole disk again. And you want to reboot. And now you'll be running into the FreeBSD installer. And so once that's going, you can set it up to run on the serial console and EFI and boot that up. You can ignore warnings about the serial not being valid right now. But now you have the regular installation process, so you can install your system, or they actually provided some examples on setting it up manually, slightly different than the default install. But whichever one you prefer, you set up the system here, and then in the end you need to enable ZFS, which they've not actually done correctly here.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, I see.
They loaded the OpenZFS, or sorry, the OpenSolaris module, but not the ZFS module. If you just load the ZFS module, it'll pull the other one in as a dependency. Anyway, fix that in our notes. Anyway.
But that's
once
a
you've done
minor
that, you will be able to... Actually, how does that work? Hold on. So they wrote the memstick to the disk, and then ran the installer and partitioned the disk.
Which would override the memstick image.
Memstick, yes. I'm not seeing how that actually worked. Oh, no, sorry. No, they didn't do that. They did a manual install and added... So the memstick was the first gig of the disk, and then the rest was empty. And they created a new ZFS partition there, and they're installing to the rest of the disk.
Okay,
right.
They left some space.
You can reuse that 1 gig at the front for swap or something.
Okay.
Yes, so that'll work fine. Then they package install curl
to get more stuff downloaded, or why is it
then they grabbed Scaleway's overlay stuff script and ran that, and that would grab the SSH keys and so on and set up the network.
Yes, yeah. Authorized keys.
It does this so that you will use the cloud init type stuff to get the right address on the VM and so on.
Okay, yeah, here it is.
Yep, and they get that going. And they say, keep in mind that current snapshots have the debugging kernel by default, which will be about 20-ish% slower. So if you really need high performance, you should recompile with the generic -no debug kernel. And although you can disable some of the heaviest weight problems by setting the malloc.conf to not spend as much time looking for memory errors.
Yeah, that gives you a bunch of performance settings, which is only in the snapshot images, not in the release versions. And yes, they mentioned that you can reuse the installer's partition for the swap if you're done with the install. You don't have to have it lay around empty.
Yeah, but it also may be a useful thing to have for rescue or something like that.
Emergencies, yeah, to have a working system.
But they set this up with boot environments, so they probably won't need that.
Okay, see, that's how you depenguinate certain systems.
Yeah, and that pretty much the same procedure should work fine for real hardware as well as the virtual machines.
Yeah, or embedded devices that only run certain Linuxes or whatever it is.
Yep.
There are ways.
Okay. So, if you would like to run on regular x86 virtual machines, check out DigitalOcean. Head over to digitalocean.com and take a look. If you use the coupon code FreeBSD Now, they'll give you a $10 credit in your account. But if you're really smart, you'll take this secret URL, do.co/BSDNow, and they'll give you a $100 credit for 60 days to try out DigitalOcean and, experience the greatness.
Yeah, for example, they switched their, so if you have an account there, they have now built it into a more feature-like or project-like control panel. So you can group your VMs together and based on the purpose that they have. So they redesigned basically the management control panel to be a little bit more, easy to understand or grouping together.
So I was achieving the same thing by having a couple of separate teams, mostly consisting of the same people.
Yeah.
But I imagine that led them to discovering that sometimes one team will be working on 3 projects. And so now inside teams, you can break things down into projects and group your different VMs together. And it makes it easier to decide, all right, we're done with that project. We can get rid of those VMs or, we know that this is how much we spent on that project or whatever.
Yeah, and projects can also contain, among droplets, load balancers, domains, floating IPs, and spaces. So that's nicely grouped together so you can see what belongs to your individual project.
Yeah, and at $15 a month for 2 gigs of RAM and 2 virtual CPUs and 60 gigs of SSD back storage and 3 terabytes of internet transfer is pretty hard to go wrong. You could decide that you want more RAM or more CPUs and do that, or you could get an even cheaper instance if you only need 1 gig of RAM and 1 CPU.
Yeah, and with that internet transfer rate, you can think about, I could run a bunch of services on that machine with all that traffic going on and not paying extra for that 1 terabyte. That's already something.
Yeah, you'd have to be doing quite a bit to use up 3 terabytes of internet traffic in a month.
Yeah, that's coming from someone who knows about internet streaming and all kinds of data pushing around in the internets. And you can also use their one-click applications in case you don't want to mess around with setting up a Discourse server or GitLab. They have one-click applications, so it will be deployed into your little droplets, and you can just run with that and don't have to hassle around with configuring it.
Yep. So next up, we have a story about setting up encrypted backups with OpenBSD.
Yeah, especially using OpenBSD base tools, so you don't have to install any additional software from ports and packages. It's all built into the operating system. So this is over at dataswamp.org. Nice domain. So it goes like this. Today's topic is encrypted backups using only OpenBSD base tools. I'm planning to write a bigger article later about backups, but it's a wide topic with a lot of software to cover and a lot of explanations about the different use cases, needs, issues, and solutions. Here they will stick to explaining how they make reliable backups for an OpenBSD system, their laptop. So what they need is the dump command, like the dump command that you know and hopefully use or have been using. And it's a utility to make a backup for a file system. It can only make a backup of 1 file system at a time. And on the laptop, it only took a backup of their home partition. So the solution is suitable for them while it is still being easy enough. Dump can do incremental backups. So you don't have to dump the whole thing all over again. You only get the deltas. It means that it will only save what changed since the last backup of the lower level. And if you do not understand this, please refer to the dump man page where there's an explanation in there. And what is very interesting with dump is that it honors no dump flag, which is an extended attribute of a fast file system. One can use the command change flags no dump /home/ your username /downloads, for example, to tell the dumps that it should not save that folder under some circumstances. And by default, dump will not save those files except for a level 0 backup, which backups the whole partition. The important features of this backup solution are they save files with attributes, permissions, and flags. It can recreate a partition from a dump, restore files interactively from a list or from its inode number, which is useful when you have files in lost and found, and one dump, one file. So the process they're using is to make a huge dump of level 0 and keep it on a remote server. Then, once a week, they make a level 1 backup, which will contain everything changed since that last dump of level 0, and everything they do at level 2 backup of their files, which includes or it contains latest files and the files changing a lot, which are often the most interesting ones. And the level 1 backup is important because it will offload a lot of changes for the level 2 backup. So there's a nice layered backup strategy. So they explain it like this. Let's say my full backup is 60 gigabytes, full of pictures, source files, GUI applications, data files, etc. Level 1 backup will contain every new picture, new projects, new everything things. Usually it's only 100 megabytes to 1 gigabyte. And as they don't need to, or as they don't add new pictures every day or use new software every day, the level 2 will take care of most little changes in their data, like source code edited, works on files, and such. The level 2 backup is really small. They try to keep it under 50 megabytes so they can easily send it to the remote server every day. Now, you could add one more dump level up to level 9, but keep in mind that those are incremental. In their case, it needs to restore all the partitions. It will need to use level 0, 1, and 2 to get to the latest backup state. And if you want to restore a file deleted a few days ago, you need to remember in which level its latest version is. So history note, dump was designed to be used with magnetic tapes because that's where it was used and developed for, way back when. And if you want to know more about the backup strategies and the actual commands that you need to run, check out the article linked in the show notes. There you can just, there's also encryption with OpenSSL, so that will also add to your backups a little bit more security, and no one else can decrypt them.
Yeah, so they show using dump and then piping that into gzip and then piping that into OpenSSL for encryption. But then they show that using xzip, they can use the multi-threaded compression mode to use more of their cores to do the compression, and that will save quite a bit of time. Sadly, there's no mode like that for the encryption in this case. You can get a multi-threaded version of gzip called PI-GZ, but xzip will give you even better compression and has the threading support built in. Also, Z standard doesn't compress quite as much as xzip, but can compress faster. And it has, what's interesting is Z standard has an adaptive mode where you give a range of compression levels. It supports 19 compression levels, so that's quite a few.
That's a bunch.
But it can change the compression level up and down based on how fast the other end of the pipe is reading it. So
ooh, cool.
If you're, say, sending it to a remote server, you want to compress as much as you can, but you don't want to be compressing so much that it's slower than the internet, because then it's actually going to take longer to back up than if you didn't compress it quite as much. So it looks at how much data is waiting to go out to the internet, and if that level starts to get low, it will compress a bit less so that it'll go faster and you'll keep up with the pipe. But if you're piling up all this data waiting for the network because the internet connection isn't very fast, you'll save time by spending more time compressing, lowering the rate you're writing data out, but making the amount of data you're writing smaller. And so it can automatically adapt up and down the compression level based on how fast the data is being consumed on the output pipe. And it supports threading.
Among other cool things, yeah. So yeah, you can exchange your compression algorithm, but the basic dumping and backup procedure is the same.
And then, the process for restoring the files is similar. the useless use of cat piped into OpenSSL, piped into decompression, whether it's, unxz, ungzip, or unzstandard, and then pipe that into the restore command.
Mm-hmm. And then you have your partition back, or your files on the partition, more importantly. So, time for the news roundup this week. We have a status of DragonFly server storage upgrades. So this is from Matt Dillon, of course, of DragonFly BSD. And that goes, last month we did some storage upgrades, particularly of internet-facing machines for packages and the OS distribution. Yesterday we did a number of additional upgrades described below, all using funds generously donated by everyone. So yeah, that wouldn't be possible if people haven't donated. So thanks for that. And so the main repository server received a 2 terabyte SSD to replace the HDDs that it was using before. And this will improve access to a number of things, maintained by the server, including the mail archives, and gives the main repo server more breathing room for repository expansion. Space was as a premium before. Now there's plenty. Oh, great. More space for big commits and changes. Monster, the quad-socket Opteron, which we currently use as the database builder and repository that we export to our public grok service, which is grok.dragonflybsd.org. It received a 512 gig SSD to add swap space for swap cache to help cache the grok metadata, and it now has 600 gigabytes of swap space configured. With over the next few weeks, we will also be changing the grok updates to ping pong between the 2 4 terabyte data drives it received in the last upgrade, so we can do concurrent updates and web access without them tripping over each other performance-wise.
Right, so it'll serve off one 4 terabyte drive while updating the other one with newer data, and once that process is done, they'll flip the website to serving off that one and start rebuilding the other one.
So the main developer box, Leave, received a 2 terabyte SSD, and we are currently in the midst of migrating all the developer accounts in /home and /build from its old HDDs to its new SSD. This machine serves developer repos, developer web stuff, our homepage and wiki, and other things, so those will become snappier as well. Hard drives are becoming real dinosaurs. We will have a few left from the old days, but in terms of active use, the only HDDs we feel are really needed to keep now are the ones we use for backups and grok data, owing to the amounts of storage needed for those functions. So 5 years ago, when we received the Blade server that now sits in the colo, we had a small 256 gig SSD for root on every blade, and everything else used HDDs. To make things operate smoothly, most of the 256 gigs root SSD was assigned to swap cache with 200 gigabytes of it, in fact, in most cases. Even just 2 years ago, replacing all those hard drives with SSDs, even just the ones being used to actively serve data and support developers, would have been cost prohibitive. But today it isn't, and the only HDDs we really need anywhere are the backups for certain very large bulk of bits of bulk data, like the grok source repository and the index. The ways things are going, even the backup drives will probably become SSDs over the next 2 years. Yeah, that's logical progression.
I suppose, but I'm still buying 12 terabyte hard drives.
Just in case.
And at prices where I'm never going to get a 12 terabyte SSD for that price. So we'll see how things go.
Yeah, or NVMEs will become more mainstream.
Yeah, but again, that's really just a faster way of connecting an SSD. Unlocks more of the performance, but doesn't generally change how much the SSD costs.
Yeah. So again, if you want to support this effort and other efforts, then donate to DragonFly BSD, and they will put it to good use.
This week's episode of BSD Now is brought to you by IX Systems. Head over to ixsystems.com/BSDNow and check out their new ebook, Open Source Storage is Disrupting the Enterprise Market.
Yeah, we've been talking about
why you really want to use open source based storage solutions because they don't lock you in and they provide better price and performance than you're going to get from an enterprise solution.
Yes, you can get your data in and out again with open source tools, and these are powered by IX systems. They will provide you from the smallest servers, the FreeNAS Mini and the Mini XL, which are already can pack 8 not CPUs, 8 disks, up to a full rack of storage if you require that, up to custom built solutions for education, finance, big data, or other industries. And IX Systems has built thousands of these systems, and they custom tested. So
I actually helped out with one the other week that was something like 700 terabytes.
Ooh.
It was the production storage for a TV show under development. And so it had all the raw video, and they were having some trouble, and they got it sorted right out. But luckily, very nice IX hardware made it very easy to get their 700 terabytes of storage set up. And, the fact that they originally didn't think they would need quite that much storage. So they had just the one machine with a shelf, and then it's like, oh, we're going to need more storage. So just another shelf full of, I think there were 10 terabyte hard drives. And then look, now we got lots more space.
Yeah, and especially all these big storage appliances are powered by ZFS, which IX Systems also helps in supporting and reporting feedback on how that works, and also employs some developers, which also push back updates to the FreeBSD head repository. And so there's a nice way of contributing back source code and knowledge about these storage systems.
Yep. And IX was also at OSCON, the open source conference from O'Reilly.
Cool.
A nice picture here of the FreeBSD Foundation booth, actually.
FreeBSD here we
booth
go.
At OSCON. And they say,
I know those folks.
Heels of FreeBSD's 25th anniversary, the O'Reilly Open Source Conference was back in Portland this year for its 20th anniversary. And the Open Source Initiative also used the opportunity to celebrate the 20th anniversary of their founding. So in addition to some Portland locals, FreeBSD co-founder Rod Grimes, Adam Stroll of A-Team Systems, and some other people joined Deb Goodkin and Ed Mast from the FreeBSD Foundation to stand at the FreeBSD table and answer people's questions.
Which I guess they get a lot of, because a lot of people go to OSCON.
Continuing tradition started back in 2009, the Community Leadership Summit unconference hosted by John O'Bacon took place on the weekend before OSCON. Similar to BSDCan, it had a perfect amount of overlap to allow for badge pickup and lots of reunions. I showed what was going on there. Some nice pictures of the main conference. So for the main conference, Michael Dexter spent quite a bit of time in the expo hall talking to people. OSCON is unique in that it offers a full spectrum of both paid and free of charge events, similar to O'Reilly's books. I asked how a dead tree publisher stays competitive in the digital era, and it turns out that in addition to events, they have made huge inroads into companies, organizations, and governments with group access to their online learning materials and so on. They say tech books obviously play a key role in the strategy, but it's they had no idea that the state of Oregon gives its employees access to the O'Reilly electronic media, providing them access to all the books about open source technology.
Yes, and also IX Systems is the main sponsor and organizer for MeetBSD later this year, which you should try to be at, because it's awesome. And that's also a way of IX Systems contributing back to the community.
Yep. So MeetBSD will be October 19th and 20th in Santa Clara at the Intel campus. If you're around then, you should definitely come by. The call for papers is still open. You have another week and a bit to submit for that. So please hurry up and do that.
Yeah, we need more submissions. We want to have a good conference and good talks.
Yes. Like some of the ones we've had before, which you can see some pictures of here.
Oh yeah. Oh, the memories. Although I haven't been to all of them, but I know the people.
I went to my first one in 2012. I was at EuroBSDCon, my first EuroBSDCon actually, in Poland in 2012. And John Hickson was like, hey, yeah, you should totally come to meet BSD. I'm like, it's like 10 days after I get home from my first trip to Europe, and you want me to fly to the States too? And I'm like, I don't know. EuroBSDCon was a lot of fun, so sure, let's do it. And I did it, and it was great.
Yeah, see?
And I've been back every time since.
Yeah.
So, speaking of IX systems and ZFS, we have another ZFS post. Our friend Mariusz Zaborski from Poland has a post about Zpool checkpoints.
On his blog, yep.
Back in March, FreeBSD landed a very interesting feature called Zpool checkpoints. Before we jump straight into the topic, let's take a step back and look at another ZFS feature called snapshots. Snapshots allow us to create an image of our single file system. This gives us the option to modify data on the dataset without fear of losing the original data. So a snapshot basically allows you to freeze a file system as exactly how it was at the second you took the snapshot and keep that. And then if you make any changes, because ZFS is copy on write, it always writes the data to a new place. But if you have a snapshot, it just means it doesn't return the old version of the data to the free space pool for it to be overwritten later. So it allows you to keep both versions, but without wasting any space. Any blocks that are the same aren't modified, and so you don't end up paying the cost of 2 whole copies of everything. You only have space used by the blocks you've actually changed.
And that's significant.
Yeah, so he says a very good example of how to use ZFS snapshots is during the upgrade of, say, a database schema. Let us consider a situation where we have a few scripts which change the schema of our database as part of an upgrade. Sometimes we're unable to upgrade everything in one transaction. For example, when we attempt to alter a table and then update the contents of it in a single transaction. If our database is on a dataset, we could snapshot it, and if something goes wrong and it doesn't complete, then we just roll back and everything's back like it was. The problem with snapshots is that it works only on a single dataset. Although you can take a recursive snapshot to snapshot a series of datasets all at the same time. It's not quite the same. If we add some datasets, like if we make new datasets, we wouldn't be able to undo that. The same with changing the attributes of a dataset, right? If we change the compression type or some of the other settings of a dataset, that's not covered by a snapshot. So that doesn't get undone when you roll back. Mm-hmm. And same thing if we rename or move a dataset. Again, that's not changing the contents of the dataset. You're actually changing the content of the pool at the higher level. And so there's no way to undo that with a snapshot. So he says another interesting problem involves upgrading the whole operating system. When we upgrade the system with a new ZFS version, what if we start upgrading our dataset and the kernel begins to crash? He says, if you use FreeBSD, I doubt this will ever happen, but still. If we roll back to an older kernel, there's a chance the dataset will not work because it's been rewritten with the new way of doing things. So a Zpool checkpoint is a solution to all of these problems. Instead of taking a snapshot of a single dataset or a series of snapshots of single datasets, you can now take a snapshot of the whole pool. Basically, what a checkpoint does is saves the Uber block, the very, very top of the tree of blocks that makes up ZFS. It saves that to a special place. And it suspends all freeing operations. So while a checkpoint exists, it will never free any data in the pool. So this means that while you make changes and write stuff to new places on disk, the old Uber block that only references all the old versions of everything is still saved. Normally, the Uber blocks, there's a ring of them, and you overwrite the oldest one each time you write a new transaction, and just do that in a loop. And then when you import the pool, it finds the newest one checks the checksum. If the checksum doesn't work, it knows that that transaction didn't finish, so it rolls back one and imports the pool. This allows you to roll back much further than that. And because we didn't allow any data to be freed, none of the data could have been overwritten. And so we can basically bring that pool back to exactly how it was before we made these changes. So that means you can undo a ZFS destroy, you can undo a rename, you can undo changing properties, any of the things that a snapshot doesn't help you with.
Oh yeah, that's a significant way of even more having ZFS preserve its state in case you need it.
So, you're rolling back not just the data, but all the metadata and everything about the pool. Even device removals or adding new devices can be undone by this checkpoint. So some operations are not allowed while a checkpoint exists because it won't be possible to handle that. Yeah. So if we rewind to the checkpoint, all of our ZFS properties will be rolled back, the upgrade will be rolled back, and even any creation or deletion of snapshots will be rolled back. So the way this ends up working is you can only have one checkpoint at a time. And while you keep it around, even when you delete stuff, you're never freeing up space because you're keeping the deleted data to allow you to roll back to this checkpoint. So they're not meant for you to keep around long term, but they work really well for, say, upgrading appliances, where you're going to, say, rename some data sets, delete some data sets, create some new ones, change some properties, and maybe even run Zpool upgrade and change the list of features that is supported by ZFS. If anything of that goes wrong, rather than have to have a shell script or something, try to figure out what was done and undo it and what parts didn't happen yet, you just export the pool and then import with the rewind to checkpoint, and the pool's back how it was.
Yeah, that's how you do firmware upgrades in these kinds of appliances.
When you do rewind to checkpoint, it basically, all the newly written data is now not marked as allocated anymore in this free space. So as soon as you do the rewind to checkpoint, you've erased everything that's been changed since you created the checkpoint, just like when you do a rollback. So there is a read-only option. So you can do Zpool import rewind to checkpoint with read-only equals on, and it will let you look at the system in that state, but not change anything. And it won't actually erase the newer data yet. Or you can decide to Zpool checkpoint discard and throw away that old Uber block, and then you can mark all of the overwritten data as free space again.
Yeah, a lot of new possibilities.
With this powerful feature, you need to remember a couple of side effects. Scrub will work only on data that isn't in the checkpoint. I'm not sure if I'm reading that right. Anyway, you can't remove devices because that will cause confusion. You can only, but you can undo adding devices. You can't split a mirror during it because that's creating devices, and you can't use the regrid command to change the grid of the pool. And you also cannot create a new checkpoint while one of the disks is offline or been removed, because you won't be able to make the copy of the Uber block on that device.
That's a safety feature, yeah.
Yeah, and he says, for me, this feature is incredibly useful, especially when upgrading an operating system on an appliance, or when I need to experiment with additional data sets and stuff. If you speak Polish, I have some additional information for you. During one of the first Polish BSD user group meetings, I had the opportunity to give a short talk on this feature, and have links to the video and slides. And Marius would like to offer his thanks to Seraphim Dimitriopoulos for developing this feature and for being so kind in sharing with me so many of its intricacies. If you are interested in knowing more about the technical details of this feature, you should check out Seraphim's blog and his video from the OpenZFS Developer Summit.
Yeah, great. That's a good summary of the feature. Speaking of features, when OpenBSD people come together to do certain feature development, it's called a hackathon. And they recently had one and this was called G2K18, and a bunch of reports have appeared from various people who attended the hackathon, and they all posted that on Undeadly, of course.
Yes,
and
which was down earlier this morning, which is why some of these tabs I have open are from archive.org.
Just in case. Yeah, it seems to be back right before our show. Great. So the first one is from Ingo Schwarze on Z, bug fixing with Martin von Duren, and about other small userland stuff. So, that's a bunch of text. And
so
it's just one report.
Yeah. So Ingo worked on improving the SED. Originally, they suspected multiple bugs in the utility. So they began by comparing the POSIX specification, the OpenBSD man page, and the OpenBSD implementation. And they found a couple of bugs.
Okay.
And then they also looked at improving UTF-8 support in some of the small utilities, like LAM, the laminating tool, which is quite useful. I didn't realize just how great it was until I started using it. Next up, Ken Westerback worked on the DHCP server and some fixes for disk label.
Oh yeah, that's important to have.
So that's interesting. And then Mark Espy worked on ports and packages stuff, including updating the package list, fixed an infamous cups bug, and adding tags to the ports tree.
Oh, interesting.
And then Antoine Jacotot was working on porting. Didn't say porting what.
Oops.
Updated lib R SVG to the latest stable version.
General porting.
So actually in the port tree. So they were playing with a bunch of interesting bits there.
Yeah, a lot of details.
Then Mathieu Herb worked on font caches and the XenoDM. Is OpenBSD going to have its own desktop manager?
See? Or is it Zen ODM?
No, I'm pretty sure it's Xeno, as in Xenokara.
Right. Right. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So OpenBSD on the desktop. That's a stripped down X display manager. So there were bug fixes there. So
cool.
Oh wow, they seem to have a lot of details in each of those reports.
Yep.
Well worth reading each of them.
Yeah. Well, I think these are kind of equivalent to the trip reports we get when the FreeBSD Foundation sponsors people to go to dev summits.
Yeah. Oh, the next one is a bit shorter, from Florian Opser on RT80VD to RAD progress, actually rewrite. So that one, it goes like this. Sometimes you have to roll the hard 6. I have been trying to bolt a standard OpenBSD parse.y based config file onto RTVD for about a year now. I could not do it. The code base is just too weird. There are other bugs lurking as well, and I have a hard time fixing them. So about 2 weeks before the hackathon, he had an evening to waste, and though hard it may seem, it had to be write an IPv6 router advertisement daemon from scratch. Well, after all, if nobody comes from the future to stop you, how bad can the decision really be? Enter our new router advertisement daemon, RAD. So that happened there. And in total, it took 9 days from start to hitting the tree. And that was the result of this hackathon for Florian. Cool. But there's more. There's Robert. There's Clemens Nani on improvements to route, PFCTL, and mount. That also.
Those are. One of these things is not like the others.
Yeah, it's interesting what everyone works on these hackathons, and of course there are also discussions between people and coordination, but they get a bunch of stuff done during these. That's cool. Carlos Cardenas on VMM VMD progress and LACP. That's also interesting in the virtualization space. Oh, wow. Yeah. Cool. And last but not least, second to last is Claudio Jaeger on OpenBGPD developments for people running those services. They probably need a good BGPD, which is already good in OpenBSD, but it can be made even better. So that's been worked on. And really now last but not least, we have the picture here from Slovenia, where they were from. Oh, see, that's really that's an action shot pretty much. Everyone at like these group tables and laptops open and people quietly working, and sometimes people have not just one laptop but two. So yeah.
Well, if there is a picture from the dev summit we had in Paris at the Mozilla office, there was me with 3 laptops networked together. It was a little crazy. Trying to get FreeBSD booting on my Mac.
Yeah, just because you can not only just take 1 laptop, but 2, or sometimes 3. Yeah. So yeah, seems like OpenBSD was a successful hackathon, the G2K18, and I guess they will work on the features that didn't get finished, and we will surely have them in future episodes as more highlighted features. Time for BSD Bits this week with something blocked on PackageSourceCon 2018. Yep, it's been happening again. There was a PackageSourceCon, and for this year's PackageSourceCon, the baton was passed to Pierre Proncheri and Thomas Merkel, located in Berlin. Oh, cool. It wasn't clear whether it would be, or they would be able to attend, which is our friend Sevan here, blogging about this year until the very last minute. He was able to book plane tickets and accommodation a couple of days before. And with the day before he flew out, he was really hectic and it did not get any sleep. Left home early in the morning and to get there to have PackageSourceCon, go to the airport, go to the city center, then roam the city a little bit looking for street art. There is a bunch of street art in Berlin. You can see one in the picture here. And of course, the main topic was PackageSourceCon, which seemed quite packed for the number of people here. Oh, there's more street art coming down. But that's where PackageSourceCon happened this year. And okay, more street art. I'm distracted by the street art in Berlin, but actually the conference for PackageSource was great. He gave a talk about something old, something new, something borrowed, and that was his talk at the conference. There were also a bunch of other things discussed, as well as giving talks about a 4th programming language and experience with it, or different other talks about, package source related topics. Check out the full article that Sevan has wrote on his blog, and maybe we'll have some future reports about PackageSourceCon.
Yeah, apparently they also talked about the J programming language and the K programming language.
How many letters in the alphabet are free still? Well, okay. There's more reports from Google Summer of Code 2018, because that's also about to wrap up. And that's also from NetBSD, this one. And the project was configuration files versioning in package source. And you can find that on the NetBSD blog.
Yeah, so this is from their GSoC student, and it says packages may install code, both machine executable code and interpretable programs like shell scripts and Perl scripts and so on, documentation and manual pages, source header files, shared libraries, and other resources, but also possibly configuration files. Configuration files are usually the means through which the behavior of a program without a user interface is specified. This covers part of the operating system, network daemons, and other programs in general that don't come with an interactive graphic or textual interface. System-wide configuration for operating system software tends to be kept under /etc, while configuration for software installed by package source ends up in your local base directory under etc. So user pkg etc by default on NetBSD. Software packaged as part of package source provides example configuration files, like under share examples and the name of the package. After a package has been extracted, prepending the prefix or local base to relative file path in the plist, metadata entries such as build info, description, etc., get extracted into the package database. Some shell scripts also get extracted there, like the install and deinstall scripts. Two main frameworks exist taking care of installation and deinstallation tasks. The package tasks, which is still experimental, is structured as a library of POSIX-compliant shell scripts implementing the functions we need to install things. Currently, package source defaults to using the pkg install framework, which as mentioned copies out from the main file separate monolithic scripts handling the creation and removal of directories on the systems outside of the package base, and so on. Among the other duties is the files add, as called by install, which copies files with the correct permissions from the package base into the destination directory. So in the case of a config file, it ends up installing the file. The file is copied into place with the permissions for read-only, and the example file coming from the default, and then gets, if one doesn't exist, it copies the example config file into the default location. As of today, this only happens if the package has never been installed before and the configuration file doesn't already exist. This is to avoid overwriting any configuration changes that the user has made. But as part of the GSoC, they'll now make this a bit smarter. Programs can call the script, and in order to avoid breakage, installed configuration is backed up in the VCS, separating user-modified files from files that have been automatically merged in the past in order to allow the administrator to easily restore the last manually edited file in case of a breakage. Branches are deliberately not used since not everyone may wish to get familiar with their version control system at that level. But basically use basic version control stuff on the config file, so you'll be able to deal with merging the config file when you update a package.
Okay.
Anyway, if you're interested in more detail, you should go check that out.
Yep, and I guess we'll see more Google Summer of Code reports as the Summer of Code program comes to an end soon. Okay, more about a global awareness week for developers, or developing under resource constraints.
It seems that a developer got slightly jealous of sysadmin day.
Yeah, this is over at Mastodon, BSD.network. And that goes by Moolander. There should be a global awareness week for developers. For a week, reduce your RAM to 2 gigabytes, disable all cores except 2, downscale your resolution to 1366 by 768, and cap your internet at 1 megabit per second or less for mobile developers. Maybe, just maybe, we will start to have less crappy, bloated software.
So, okay, so it sounds like this is a week of punishment for developers rather than not quite the same as what I was picturing them being jealous about.
The resources. Yeah, but it's true. In general, programs have become less and less mindful about using resources sparingly, instead of let's just allocate a bunch of memory. Like, look at your let's say browser usage, how much memory is that taking? So I agree there's a bunch of new features in those programs, but the downside is there's a bunch of memory that you need to provide just to have a basic browser running these days, and other programs as well, like well, Office suites have never been small in the memory footprint, but also resolution-wise and the number of CPU cores they need. It's a problem. And I guess students nowadays learning to program are not being taught to be mindful about resources in computers. So they just use whatever is available and as much as they can.
Anyway, the Polish BSD user group has their upcoming meeting on August 9th. They have a secret special guest, so you'll definitely want to go see that one. George Neville Neal will be stopping in Poland on his way to wherever he's off to next.
Cool, yeah.
To Cambridge or not. But he will be giving his dtrace for developers, a short version of that, as at the Polish user group there. And then there will also be a talk about live streaming the FIFA World Cup finals.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Isn't that user group also being streamed live?
Yes.
The meetings? Okay, so people who
I will be on an airplane during that, though. So
yeah, you can watch that live, but in case people are interested in what they're talking about, it's available. And another BSD user.
Our friend Savan is organizing the August BSD meetup for London. Will be on Tuesday, August 14th at 6:30 at the Hand and Shears.
Oh, that's right before the BSD Cam Developer Summit. Okay. Plenty of activities in the UK that week for the BSDs. But generally great to have that user groups becoming a regular thing, and that people go there, have a way to talk to other fellow BSD users and developers. Great. We also found, or it got posted to us, there's a collection of reasons why ZFS is better, so that people don't have to repeat it all often. Whyzfsisbetter.com, and they asked us to update it a little bit or correct some errors that might be in there, and Alan has been happy to do that. But if you want to
not had time to read over the whole thing yet, but
but elevator pitch wise, if people have never heard about ZFS, point them to that website and they can get the condensed version about the cool features that ZFS has on that website, as well as supported systems and bunch of.
And it's on GitHub, so you can fork it and improve it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so thanks for that. We have an easy way to point people to that one. And we have something great to tell you, because EuroBSDCon 2018 talks and tutorials have been announced and registration is open now. You can go there, participate, or at least attend, and make use of that.
EuroBSDCon will be in Romania, September 20th to 23rd at the Polytechnic University there. You want to register soon. The early bird discount ends on August 24th. After that, you will have to pay extra for being lazy. So register now.
Yes, don't miss that. Alan and I will be there among hopefully 200 other people. And they have already published the schedule and the registration, of course. Oh, the tutorials are also there. Okay, great.
Yes, tutorials need to be there because you pick them at registration.
Oh, yeah, you need to register for that so they can size the rooms, how many people are going to, I don't know, managing BSD systems with Ansible by yours truly, or in parallel, advanced container management with libIOCage, or ports and Poudriere, which is Niklas Seising giving his tutorial about how to do ports and packages for the first time, as well as libTLS tutorial for TLS beginners by Bob Beck, or a full day Marshall Kirk McCusick introduction to the FreeBSD open source operating system, or Peter Hessler giving you the introduction for BGP for developers and sysadmins.
Ooh, I don't have to compete with Kirk.
Yeah, that's good. And check out also the talk, schedule and what kind of cool things you can hear there. So it should be a great conference coming up in Europe. Oh, speaking of conferences, another one is happening by the end of the year. Meet BSD 2018. We mentioned it already on the show, but you can't mention it enough. This is in October 19 till the 20th in Santa Clara, California. The call for papers closes on August 13, so hurry up.
Actually, it closes on the morning of August 13th, so you mean you have until late at night on the 12th.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Even shorter. Yeah. So don't wait. Send a paper that you want to present on BSDs, and of course, registration has also been open for a while now. So if you want to just attend, which is also good, go ahead and do that. So we can see you at BSD.
Love to get more talks submitted, and
yeah, you will see us both there.
See you there.
Yeah, short and sweet. Of course, someone who is also likely to be there is TarSnap author Colin Percival. And what is TarSnap? Well, that's not only just a backup solution, but it's also powering our feedback and questions section that's coming up. But TarSnap is exactly the solution for your backup needs in case you want to do backups regularly and you want to do them securely into the cloud because that has a lot of disk space. But you also are conscious about only being the single person who holds the key to your backup and to the restore. Because in case you need it, you can restore it if you hold the key, and no one else in the cloud is able to access your backup files, which contain important data, because it's encrypted, and it's encrypted before it leaves your system. So all the data that you have is segmented, deduplicated, new unique blocks are calculated, those are compressed, and then they are encrypted and signed, which means it's smaller through the compression and deduplication, and that result is encrypted and put out into the Amazon cloud, where you can pull it down again in case you need it. And that's what TarSnap does for you.
Yep. It only takes $5 to get started, so you might as well be backing up securely.
Yep, and you can do, it has a bunch of documentation, how to get started on the website, tarsnap.com, and there's a bunch of clients available for various operating systems, so there's no excuse for not using it or not backing up.
And well, you know, we repeat time and time again that it's as easy to use as tar. If that's not easy enough for you, there's even a graphical client now. So
yeah, so even less excuses for not doing your backups. And don't blame us if you lose files and haven't used TarSnap before.
Yes, in fact, so, yeah. If you lose files after all the times we told you to do backups, you should have to pay us a fine.
Yeah, the $5 for the TarSnap service. So yeah, check that out and make backups. Okay, time for our feedback and questions section this week, starting with Dale about the L2ARC recommendations there and drive age question. Dale writes, "Hello, Alan and Benedict. I want to add an L2ARC to my server. While doing some research, I found some articles suggesting that I use enterprise-grade SSDs due to their increased write endurance. Are those drives really necessary compared to a consumer SSD?" I'm shaking my head.
You're going to get written to a lot. Like, you know, as you're reading stuff off disk, the stuff you're pushing out of the ARC and RAM will get written to the SSD, and maybe it'll get used, maybe it won't, but you'll be constantly overwriting this drive over and over and over again. Eventually, that will kill the SSD. If it's a cheaper SSD, it'll die a lot sooner.
Sure. But it's not the only requirement to...
Right. You know, if you're not depending on the L2ARC for speed, then I suppose it won't matter that it dies. But at the same time, if you're not depending on the L2ARC for speed, why do you need an L2ARC at all?
In the first place, yeah. Okay, so he writes, I have 3 1 terabyte Western Digital red drives with 3 that are mirrors and want to add 4 more, which is part of my second question. So he has 4 1 terabyte Western Digital red drives that are about 6 years old. They're in a Netgear ReadyNAS Pro 4, They have been scrubbed every month with no errors. I want to take the ReadyNAS out of service and move the drives into my FreeBSD server so I can benefit from ZFS instead of proprietary RAID the ReadyNAS uses. So he's been building PCs since 1992 and worked in IT hardware service for 8 years. They never replaced drives until they failed or showed signs of failing. What are our opinions on continuing to use these drives?
They're getting awfully old. The chance of them failing very close together is quite high at this point.
6 years, yeah. It can happen anytime.
If you're
you might be
3D
lucky.
mirrors or something, I suppose, but you've got your money out of those drives. Why not buy new ones?
Yeah. Over time, replace them and
the newer ones
data
will be faster as well.
Yep. So don't wait too long. Don't be sorry afterwards.
I know that I have many drives that old still around because
they died. Run smart checks on them so you can see how badly they're dying. Which one is likely to be the first one? But yeah, let's. I hope that answers your question. And up next is Todd with ZFS and S3 questions, or one question. Todd writes, love the show, but I recently ran across an interesting idea. What if I could import Zpools or add datasets directly from Amazon S3? I went hunting around and really did not find much other than it should be possible if you can get standard in and standard out working. I just wanted to know if this is possible. Could you simply Zpool import a bucket or mount a dataset? It sure would be nice to be able to put or get data or recreate a snapshot directly to and from S3.
So you can use ZFS send to turn a dataset into a file that you could store in S3. Although, depending what you're doing, like if you want to actually interactively use it, you would use Amazon EBS rather than S3. But yes, you could store a ZFS send stream into S3, get it back later, and ZFS receive it, I suppose.
Yeah, there's no limit.
It depends what you're wanting to do. Probably not related to what you want, but what some people, when I hear ZFS and S3, I think of this other thing called Minio, which is a daemon you can run on top of FreeBSD to create an S3-like API to allow people to store files on ZFS. So an app that only knows how to use S3, you point it at a URL that is your FreeBSD machine, and it talks to this app, which writes the data onto ZFS, and you get basically a ZFS-powered S3 clone.
And all the MinIO clients that you start on other servers that use the same ID or key, I'm not remembering that.
Yeah, you can do
they can participate
stuff to actually make sure that, each one of those objects you write to S3 is stored on 3 out of the 5 of your ZFS machines or something like that.
Yeah, for backup purposes in case one dies.
Well, not backups as much as redundancy, but yeah.
Or redundancy, yeah, to replicate among different machines, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's our answer to that. And next up is Ephraim with License Poem. Oh, I think we had that one already. So that goes...
This isn't the one where somebody actually read the poem. I think this is somebody's license that actually is a poem.
Oh, okay. So that goes, I'm a bit behind on listening, but this is my first license text. I thought of that uses a poem for its license. So there's a link here.
Yeah, it says, this work as is we provide, no warranty express or implied. We've done our best to debug and test, liability for damages denied. Permission is granted hereby to copy, share, and modify. Use it as fit, free or for profit. These rights on this notice rely.
Ooh, wow, that's really poetic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks for
It's a decent version of a BSD MIT-ish license.
Yeah, cool. So small bits like that keep the show interesting. And last but not least is Hendrik with yet another ZFS question. That's a bit longer. Here goes. First of all, thank you for a great show. I'm a long-time listener, but first-time writer. It's actually because of BSD Now that I started to play around with OpenBSD in the first place. Oh, great. After 20 years or so in the Linux world, and now all infrastructure that I manage is almost only driven by BSD. See, Alan, that's what we do with the show. Yep. It's inevitable. The only thing that he has a hard time changing out is his day-to-day Lenovo T40 3.1s with Debian. I know that there have been a lot of questions about ZFS already, and there's yet another one coming. I don't really know if this is going to be a question or not, or if it's just a need to confirmation, but I've planned this, it's the right way to do. But here it comes anyway. So he has a small home server running Debian with ZFS on Linux and a lot of KVMs running OpenBSDs and a few Debian servers for doing various tasks. The ZFS pools he has today is a small SSD for our pool, one build out of four old 1 terabyte disks in RAID Z1 that he just has laying around when he first installed ZFS on the server and didn't know anything, and with a Samsung 512 gig SSD for Alto Arc and ZIL. At first, he just used it for playing around and learning ZFS, since he had used LVM on everything for the past 10 or more years, but now finds himself in love with ZFS and would never, with the technology of today, change back. So since his confidence of both his skills regarding ZFS, with a big thanks to Michael W. Lucas and his books on the internet, and Alan as co-author on one of these books, or two of them actually, and in ZFS in general, only have grown, he can now see that the server has nothing to do on the old LVM partitions and all data is on ZFS. So he plans to change away from the RAID Z1 to a mirror of two 12 terabyte disks. But what is the best way to do this, preferably without any or at least very little downtime to the KVM? So he has outlined his way of doing it. So first, create a new mirror of the two 12 terabyte disks and create a pool on it. Take a snapshot of the old pool, send and receive the snapshot.
He specifically mentioned setting dedupe. You probably don't want to set dedupe. You almost never, ever want to set dedupe. Compression, though, you do want to turn that on in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, be careful with dedupe. So the third step is send and receive the snapshot to the new pool. So you can just take a snapshot of the container, or do I have to take one of the each subpool and send and receive separately?
So I'm guessing by subpool he means dataset. So if you do ZFS snapshot -r for recursive, pool at snapshot name, that snapshot name will exist on every dataset under where you take the snapshot. So then you can ZFS send that to the new pool. Once that's done, take a second snapshot of everything and do incremental replication to cover everything that changed in it might, take a day to copy all the data to the new pool. So you do an incremental and send that, and it should take a lot less time. And then it probably still took over an hour, so then you do it again and just keep repeating that process until the amount of time is down to, less than a minute. Then you want to stop all of your KVMs, another snapshot, replicate that real quick, then you can switch the pools around, mount points around or whatever, and start the KVM again, and should have less than 60 seconds of downtime, hopefully.
Yeah, and have consistent backups. Because previously the KVMs were still running, but after you switched them off, they stored all the data on the snapshots, not on the snapshots, on the data sets, and then you have the second replication going on with the actual data being consistent for the KVMs.
He also mentions adding a small SSD for ZIL. So the ZIL, the ZFS intent log, is a feature of ZFS, and it's always there. It's usually part of the pool. When you have an SSD for the write cache, that's called slog, separate intent log. And that's when you have the ZIL be on a different disk. But anyway, just a terminology thing there. But yes, your plan mostly will work. You just need that little loop in the middle to get the amount of
replications.
How different the two file systems are very small before you do the part where you stop the KVMs, replicate the last bits, and then start them again.
Yeah, so in the future, I can always add more space by adding yet another mirror of 12 terabyte drives, because let's face it.
When you add separate mirrors, they don't have to be the same size. So you can...
Yeah, they can be smaller or
you
bigger.
You can use 8 terabyte drives if they happen to be on sale, or 16 terabyte drives if those are a thing then, and so on.
Yeah, that's cool with ZFS. Next project he writes is getting a FreeBSD with Beehive to run the guest and a couple of storage servers running GlusterFS on top of ZFS for better redundancy and speed, which is already tested on his KVM. But that might be a mail for another time and a project for another day. Yeah. Do that and send us a report or a little blog post maybe if you have succeeded in that, or if you have a different question, then send this in a future episode.
Yeah, so if you just do ZFS snapshot-r container at snapshot name, it will automatically create container/vm at snapshot name and container-vm/guest/media at snapshot or whatever. And you'll be able to just do replication across all of those.
Yeah, that's how ZFS does it. Easy and incrementally helps you save a lot of time transferring files after the initial one, of course.
Yeah, the initial one might take a while, and that's why you would do the initial one, let that happen. Well, the KVMs don't even have to pause for this. They can just keep going. And then once that's done, you could do another incremental. And then just keep doing that until the amount of time it's taking to transfer it is down to as small as it's going to get. Then you can do stop the KVMs, snapshot, last replication, rename the mount points or whatever to get your new pool in the right place, and then start the KVMs back up. And ideally, you'd have downtime of less than 60 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. Try doing that with LVM.
Yeah, good luck with that. So that pretty much wraps up our frequent question section, as well as the whole episode. In any episode, we ask you to send us questions, comments, show ideas, topics, or stories that you found on the internet about the BSDs, and send that to feedback@bsdnow.tv so we have content for future episodes.
Yes. You should probably do your contest thing again, though.
Oh, right. Isn't that...
Give people a bit more time because...
The thing? Yeah. So
we've
in
only
our
got
last
4 entries
episode,
so far.
Yeah. So we have this little power bagel, which is a mobile power adapter for various countries that can serve up to 4 different devices. You can see it here, that they don't block each other.
The point of this is that you're the guy at the conference, like EuroBSDCon, who can spare an outlet for a new friend.
Yep. And
this is a friend-making device.
Exactly. And this little goodie is easy to get. Just look at the 4 December episodes that we did in 2017. And there should be a couple of letters here in my bookcase on each of those 4 episodes. Send us those letters or the words that they form in order, of course. Send that also to feedback@bsdnow.tv. And then we'll draw the lucky winner live on the show. That's next week on the 8th, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And then we will contact you and send you this little goodie thing. We only have one, unfortunately, but even with that, it's a nice way of saying thank you to our trusty readers and listeners over the years that have been keeping with us over these 256 episodes that we did already, plus this one. So yeah, thanks again for watching.
Remember, register for EuroBSDCon and submit a paper for MeetBSD.
Yeah. Be early, don't be late, and see you there at the conference or in the next episode, whichever comes first.